By the time the church bell coughed out its last week note over Dry Creek, the whole town had already decided Clara Bell would die alone, and they had decided it with the same casual cruelty men use to flick dust from their sleeves. She was the seamstress with the limp, the quiet woman in the narrow shop beside the livery, the one with the careful hands and the uneven step, the one men nodded at without ever really seeing, the one women pitied until she turned her back. Because pity in a small town is just insult wearing Sunday clothes. At 16, a wagon wheel snapped on the north road, crushed her ankle under flour sacks, and left the bones to heal wrong after that. Dances disappeared. Courtship cooled, and life narrowed into thread. Needles, candlelight, and the long discipline of pretending she did not notice what had been taken from her. She stitched wedding gowns for girls younger than her, morning dresses for women older than her, shirts for men who never remembered her eye color. And she did it so beautifully that half the county wore her work without speaking her name with respect. In Dry Creek, a woman could be admired for talent only until the talk turned to marriage. Then beauty mattered, youth mattered, an easy walk mattered, and Clara, they said, had run short of all three. Still, every evening, just before sunset, Clara stood in her doorway and looked down Main Street as the sky turned copper over the cattle dust. Not because she expected anything to change, but because some stubborn part of her refused to die in silence. Then one August evening, the richest cattleman in Texas rode into town and stopped in front of her door. Everett Boone owned more land than some counties, more cattle than Dry Creek had citizens, and enough money to make bankers smile before he spoke. He was a widower, hard-faced, broad-shouldered, iron-gray at the temples, with the kind of stillness that made other men lower their voices. Women had circled him for years, but he had never bent toward any of them. So when he climbed down from his horse, stepped onto Clara's porch, and handed her a torn black ranch coat, the whole street felt it. "I need this fixed," he said. Clara took the coat and told him Friday. Nothing more, but when Friday came and he returned, tried it on, and flexed one shoulder, he looked at her with a silence that made her pulse trip, then said, "Fits better than new," and after a pause added, "You work like you mean to outlast God." That line ran through Dry Creek faster than fire through summer grass. By supper, the men were laughing over cards. By midnight, the women were whispering into lamp smoke. By dawn, Clara could feel eyes on her from every porch. Everett Boone sent over another coat, then a saddle blanket, then a length of fine cloth from San Antonio, with the message that good work deserved good material. And the town's amusement turned restless, because people can tolerate a lonely woman, but they cannot tolerate a lonely woman becoming visible. Suddenly the barber told Clara she had striking eyes. A ranch hand offered to carry her parcels. Women who had treated her like wallpaper began wandering into her shop to ask whether Mr. Boone was kind, whether he smiled, whether he had mentioned coming again. Clara answered little, but under her silence, something old and dangerous stirred. Not vanity, not hope exactly, but fury, because now they saw her only because a rich man had looked her way. Remember this: a town laughs first, and only later realizes it is laughing at its own future shame. The humiliation arrived at the church social, because disgrace in a western town prefers a public room. Clara nearly stayed home, but Mrs. Hartwell from the parsonage insisted. So Clara wore a dark blue dress she had sewn for herself in secret. Modest, elegant, fitted so perfectly it looked like dignity made visible. When she entered the schoolhouse, conversation thinned, not because she looked foolish, but because she looked beautiful, and beauty in the wrong woman offends people more than ugliness ever could. Everett Boone stood near the back wall with a glass untouched in his hand. His eyes lifted the moment she entered, and Clara felt the room tighten like a rope. Then Amelia Voss, the banker's daughter, pale gloves, polished malice, stepped in front of her and said loudly, "Miss Bell, what a brave choice. I always say confidence matters more than symmetry." Laughter broke out. Thin and cowardly, Clara froze, because this was not new, only louder. Then Everett Boone crossed the room, slowly, boots hard on the floorboards, and by the time he stopped beside her, the whole schoolhouse had fallen silent. He looked Amelia Voss in the face and said, "You were born lucky, Miss Voss. But luck has made you stupid." Her smile collapsed. His hand turned to Clara. And in a voice steady enough to crack the room in half, he asked, "Would you do me the honor of dancing?" Clara could not dance the way other women could. Not with the limp, but Everett did not force her into anyone else's rhythm. He moved with her, slow, deliberate, as if the music had always been meant for exactly this pace. That was the night Dry Creek learned the joke had changed sides. After the dance, gossip became hunger. Some said Everett wanted a housekeeper. Some said he was lonely. Some said he had finally grown too old to care what walked beside him. Clara heard everything, and each word scraped something raw inside her. Because hope offered late can feel more dangerous than hope denied. Then Everett came to her shop at dusk, hat in hand, and asked her to supper at the Boone Ranch. Clara asked why. Because she had lived too long inside disappointment to trust softness without reason. Everett answered after a long pause, "Because every room I enter feels quieter after you leave it," so she went. The Boone house sat high over the southern range and over beef bread and bitter coffee. Everett told her the truth he had not offered anyone in 20 years. His wife Ruth had died in childbirth, the baby with her. And since then, he had built wealth because numbers did not ask him to feel. Clara told him about the wagon accident, the lost dances, the years of stitching other women into celebration while standing outside it herself. And when she finished, Everett looked at her across the lamp glow and said, "They made your Limp the headline because they were afraid of the rest of you." Then he drew one breath and said, "I am too old to court fancy, so I will give you truth. I think of you morning and night. I respect you more than anyone in this county. And if you can bear the trouble it will cause, I want to ask for your hand. When fate finally comes, it rarely arrives gently." Clara should have been happy, but terror hit first. Because loving a powerful man in a small town means being dragged under every secret resentment that town has stored for years. By Monday, someone left a dead blackbird on her doorstep. By Tuesday, Gold Digger was smeared across her shop window in soap. By Wednesday, boys copied her Limp in the street while their fathers watched from porch rails and did nothing. Clara washed the window herself, buried the bird herself, stood through the laughter herself, and something inside her nearly split. So she took Boone's plain, gold ring, rode out to the north pasture, and found him near the branding crew. She held out the ring with a hand that would not stop trembling, and said she could not spend the rest of her life being torn apart by people who had never once let her breathe. Everett stared at her, dismissed every ranch hand with one look, and said the words that changed everything. "Then we leave." Clara blinked. "Leave what?" "All of it," he said. "This town, these porch judges, every damned mouth in it. I have land in New Mexico, grass, water, room enough for a new beginning. We marry, we go, and Dry Creek can choke on the dust behind us." That was the moment Clara understood the difference between being wanted in private and being chosen at cost. She said yes, not softly, not timidly, but with the courage of a woman who had been denied too long and finally met a man willing to burn for his promise. They married 4 days later under a hard blue sky. No church, no choir, only a judge, 2 ranch hands, Mrs. Hartwell crying into a handkerchief, and half the town watching from a distance like people staring at a fire they secretly started. Clara wore cream silk she had sewn herself. Everett wore black. And when he placed the ring on her finger, his hands shook more than hers. As their carriage rolled past the hotel, Amelia Voss stepped from the crowd and hissed, "He will tire of dragging you behind him." Clara turned, the whole street still as judgment. And for the first time in her life, she did not lower her eyes. "No," she said, clear enough for every porch and window to hear. "But this town will spend years dragging itself behind what it did to me." Then she climbed into the seat beside her husband. Everett took the reins, and together they rode west. Past the church, the mercantile, the shop where she had sewn in silence. Past every face that had mistaken her quiet for weakness, and not one person in Dry Creek found the courage to stop them. The finest revenge is not the sharp line, it is the life that proves the line was true. Within 2 years, word drifted back east. Clara Boone had opened the finest mercantile and dress shop between Santa Rosa and Fort Worth. She hired widows, trained girls for wages, and dressed ranch wives and railroad families with the calm authority she once used only to survive. Everett expanded his herds, yes, but people spoke more often of his wife than his cattle, of the elegant woman with the measured walk and the unshakable gaze, the woman no one dared pity because she had turned her old wound into majesty. Everett watched her the way a thirsty man watches rain, grateful, late to hope and loyal once it came. Back in Dry Creek, time performed its quiet punishment. Amelia Voss married badly. The banker lost money. The barber drank through his charm, and whenever a traveler mentioned the Boones, prosperous, dignified, deeply in love, Main Street fell quiet, because memory is a cruel creditor, and Dry Creek owed more than it could ever repay on certain evenings in New Mexico. When sunset spread red over the plain and the lamps were low, Clara would stand on her porch beside Everett and feel the old ache in her leg rise with the cooling air. She never lost the limp, and she never needed to, because by then it belonged to the road behind her, not the life ahead. Everett would rest one hand at the small of her back, steady, certain, and Clara would think of the girl she had once been, buried under dust, laughter, and other people's verdicts. And she would know at last that the town had been wrong about the most important thing of all. She had never been the seamstress no one wanted. She had only been the woman a small, mean place was too blind to deserve, until one hard man with a broken heart saw her clearly, stopped in front of her door, and chose her in full view of everyone who never had the courage to try.